Hello and welcome. My name is Eva, Master's Level Professional in the field of psychology, author, and international book coach. And we are talking about the beginning stages of building your story. So we are going to discuss your theme, your setting, and the start of your plot. These are essential components that you want to make sure you have outlined or develop a framework for before you even start to write, right? So the best authors have an idea of where their story is going before they even put pen to paper. This is going to help you do things like overcome any writer's blocks that might develop, and it'll certainly help the story flow and move along smoothly, which is something that is essential when we are writing. So before you get started, you want to make sure you have strong characters developed. Why? Because what is a story but characters interacting with each other? So if you have a well-developed character, you have an idea of what they're going to say and how they're going to behave with each other when you are building your plot. So I have plenty of videos on the different type of archetypes, so make sure you check those out, right? Strong characters is what we want, right? So let's get started. We're gonna start with building or settling on a theme. So first up, let's start with revenge. We all love a good revenge theme, right? This is where somebody has done them wrong and the main character has to go out and they gotta get them. All right, so examples of the revenge theme include True Grit, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Stephen King's Carrie. We all remember Carrie with the high school girl with the pig's blood. All right, so another example of a theme is romance. All right, so think of all of the Nicholas Sparks novels, such as The Notebook. Every time I think of The Notebook, I start to even tear up. All right, so other examples of themes include apocalypse. Of course, the sky is falling, the world is ending, the zombies are coming. Another example of a theme is coming of age. So think of The Catcher in the Rye. Think of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, for example. These are examples of stories where people are growing up, they're developing, they're learning about the experience of life and adulthood. Another example of a theme, good versus evil. Also, you have your adventure books, your spy books, your supernatural books like Dracula or Twilight. And then you also have your fantasy books like Harry Potter. So of course themes can go on and on, so pick one and it's going to help you start to build your framework, right? Because of course an action and adventure movie is going to have an incredibly different framework or different storyline than say your romance novel or your fantasy book, right? So let's move right along to your setting. When considering your setting, you also want to think about the time in which your setting is established. So this might be the past, the present, and the future. So this is going to affect how your characters behave and interact. Because of course, someone from a 1900s or 1800s Western is of course going to behave a lot differently from somebody in present day, and of course somebody maybe 100, 200 years in the future. So considering these social norms that happen within these time frames, how do people talk, how do people behave? This is all part of your setting. Now I've made this next point dozens of times. Make sure you are descriptive as possible, especially when you are setting your scene. Your readers, your audience need to feel like they are in the place. So if I am reading your text, I want to know what the place smells like. What does it look like? How does it make the character feel? So for example, if I am in a living room in somebody's home, I want to know, what does that living room smell like? How much light, if any, is pouring into the room? What does the furniture look like? So for example, Jim came in and sat on the sofa. Boring! No! Jim came in and immediately noticed the worn down purple velvet tufted sofa. He sat down and noticed how worn the cushions were, and there was a stench of mold that emanated from the fabric. Now notice the difference in between Jim sitting on the sofa and the picture I paint. Can you see the sofa after I've described it? Make sure you set the scene in this way. Is there a stench, right? Does this place make you feel invited? Does this place make you feel repulsed, right? Is it disgusting? Is it clean, right? How old does the furniture appear, right? Really make sure you use those adjectives. Moving into the plot, the first thing you want to make sure you've done and that is super compelling is create an introduction that matters. So think of your introduction to a book the same way you would when you are meeting a new person. You can tell within the first couple of minutes, you can get a sense of this person's character type. You can get a sense of how this person speaks, how they behave, and an overall feeling of if you will like this person or not, right? Consider how many people you've met and immediately been turned off by them versus the number of people you've met and you've been kind of intrigued or you kind of had a good vibes, so to speak. Now the beginning or the introduction of your book can be considered the same way. So your opening lines especially have to be gripping. So consider some of the most famous opening lines in history, right? So think of for example, Charles Dickens. What is his story? The Tale of Two Cities, where he starts by saying, "'Twas the best of times, 'twas the worst of times," right? This is one of the most famous opening lines to a book ever because it draws the person in. They say, what was going on, right? There's this sort of juxtaposition within the phrasing. Things are good, things are bad. All right, well then tell me more, right? So the introduction matters for sure. Next, make sure you introduce the characters and then you introduce the conflict. So for example, let me use Harry Potter for example. We are first introduced to the main characters, right? We're introduced to Harry and then we're introduced to his sort of a dismal situation with his family. And then a little bit later on, still in the introductory portions, we meet the other main characters. We meet Ron and we meet Hermione. And then once we've sort of developed a connection with these characters, the plot starts to unfold or the conflict starts to unfold slowly. So initially we don't know that there is an evil wizard out there coming to get Harry. That's sort of revealed over time, right? Who is a we don't say that person's name, right? There's this sort of mystery behind what the conflict might be. And of course, there is some foreshadowing there. So we want to be gently introduced to the conflict, right? So we're not solving the conflict. We're not laying it all out on a line because we want to continue to make things interesting. And finally, in the beginning stages of your book, when you are talking about the first parts of your plot, you also want to explore some secondary characters and perhaps even some secondary plot lines or some underlying plots that are subplots, they're also called, are occurring. Now, a subplot consists of additional conflicts or points of explanation. So the main plot revolves around the main character, if you will. And then some of the subplots can often include some of those secondary characters or even backstory to some of the characters. So for example, again, I'll use Harry Potter, one of the most popular books around. Consider the last sort of book, the last sort of points when the story is wrapping up, is we go into Snape's background and sort of all the mysticism surrounding his character is revealed, and we get a greater understanding of why he behaved how he did. And sort of everything sort of comes to life and comes full circle when we get introduced, or his subplot is explained there. And then, of course, in your subplot, you can sprinkle on a little bit of romance, perhaps. You can sprinkle in a little bit of revenge. Of course, these things spicing up and give you more layers to the story. You also want to go into a bit of detail about the secondary characters, or those who support the main characters. So the plot doesn't necessarily revolve around them, but they certainly make an impact because they might influence, or they might help the main character defeat the conflict or overcome any sort of obstacles that have been placed in their way. All right. So this can be co-workers, it can be close friends, it can be relatives, or anybody that's sort of lending their support or adding interest or even humor to the main character's role. And so, of course, they can serve as the comic relief. They can be a sage. They can be a lover. All right. So make sure you go again through the character types that I explained in some of my other videos. All right. So I hope this helps you out. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about building your setting, picking a theme, or starting on your plot. I would love to hear from you. Okay. Until next time, be happy and confident speakers and writers.